Hello, I'm Robert J. Sawyer, and this is Supernatural Investigator. This week, we investigate extraterrestrial life. In the 1970s, scientist and scholar Carl Sagan described our world as a pale blue dot floating in a sea of the cosmos. Sagan pondered mankind's place in the universe and speculated that we are not alone. Our Supernatural Investigator is noted Kansas City-based author and essayist Tonnies. His journey to discover the truth about life from other planets takes him to the leaders in the field, from the headquarters of SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, to American astronomer Margaret Turnbull, who is heading a bold new venture to uncover habitable planets deep in space. Is there life on other planets, or are we unique in the universe? We explore this fascinating question on this week's Supernatural Investigator.
Carl Sagan, the famous astronomer and author, once mused that we live on an insignificant planet of a humdrum star lost in a galaxy, tucked away in some forgotten corner of the universe, in which there are far more galaxies than people. But in a universe with possibly trillions of planets, why have we not yet found solid evidence of other life? I'm Tonnies. I'm a Kansas City-based author and essayist. I write about the search for extraterrestrial intelligences.
I think it's inevitable that we'll find life on other planets. The question that comes up then is whether or not that life is intelligent, which is a whole other matter. And then from there, is there a possibility that we can contact that life, or even stranger yet, whether that life has already contacted us in some way.
The prospect of getting on the road and chatting with some of the brightest minds on this planet about E.T. is a dream come true for me.
If we find life on another planet, all eyes are going to be on that research.
Think of what we might discover. Almost every facet of human knowledge could be added to. There are few questions bigger than, are we alone in the universe?
Life must be a very common phenomenon. There's probably life everywhere, and that's a big result.
Life, yes, would be, fascinating. Intelligent life, that's where you really have to start asking the theological questions of what all this means.
I think it will be avoiding us. There are places on Earth that we wouldn't like to go to. They will look at us very much as we look at those sort of places.
What is the essence of being human? What is it that we would say to another civilization if we were to be heard? Is a powerful way for us to reflect upon our own sense of meaning and purpose.
The most obvious place in recent times to look for evidence of life on other worlds is our closest neighbor, Mars. In over 30 years of exploratory missions, no conclusive evidence of life has been found on this Earth-like planet.
That's because it's the closest place where there's any chance of finding it. It's not impossible to get there, get samples, bring them back, and so we tend to focus on Mars.
Neville Wolfe is a professor of astronomy and director of Laplace, the Life and Planets Astrobiology Center at the University of Arizona in Tucson.
And do you personally think that we will find life forms, whether simple or relatively complex?
I think we have a good chance of finding simple life forms because I don't think it's that hard for life to form.
A close associate of Neville Wolfe is Father Chris Corbally, vice chairman of the Vatican Observatory. Even the Pope in Rome has an interest in life from other planets.
Why is the Vatican interested in this line of inquiry?
Actually, religion concerns the whole of our life, including, what goes on our Earth, how we were formed, what made us, and God's action in creation. Is life unique on our Earth, or is abundant life elsewhere? And these kinds of questions will reflect on our understanding of God. What's the Creator like? What does and you find that out by saying, what does the Creator make?
Let's suppose that we find an extrasolar planet and we can deduce that there's a good chance that it has life. Just one. What do you think the impact would be on not just Catholics, but on the human condition.
So I think life, yes, would be, fascinating. Intelligent life, a sign of that, that's where you really have to start asking the theological questions of what all this means. What kind of a God is so overflowing in love and creativity that makes all kinds of intelligent life as well as life.
I think we'll probably find life, personally. I think once we establish that there is a biosphere of some sort in the solar neighborhood, that will open the door. That'll be kind of the gateway for more widespread acceptance of the possibility that we live in a universe that's veritably teeming with life.
The question is, how would we prepare for a meeting of cosmic minds? And would we understand each other at all? When most people think of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, they think of SETI. For almost a quarter of a century, the SETI Institute has been scanning the skies for a signal from ET. Dr. Seth Shostak is SETI's senior astronomer and host of SETI's own radio show.
I was sitting at the observatory late one night. I was reading this book. It was by Carl Sagan and a Russian physicist by the name of Shklovsky. And this book said, it was essentially talking to me at 3 in the morning, saying, the equipment you're using to study these galaxies could also be used to eavesdrop on aliens. And man, that was a romantic idea. So when, for other reasons, I moved to this part of California, when they called me up and said, you want a job here, I didn't hesitate.
SETI is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and you are searching for that intelligence via radio.
Indeed, we are. We're trying to kind of eavesdrop on signals that, intelligent beings on another planet might be broadcasting that we could pick up. Not only radio, by the way, we also look for flashing lights in case they'd prefer to get in touch by using a big laser, something like that. The only stars you can really, with confidence, throw out are stars that are very, very bright, because it turns out if they're very, very bright, they're going through their fuel so quickly, they'll burn out within, a few tens of millions of years. Now, that might be a long time if you're waiting for a bus, but a few tens of millions of years is very, very short period of time in which to develop life on a planet, maybe have it become intelligent.
In the history of SETI, has there ever been a strong signal that has made astronomers want to take a closer look just in case we are being paged?
That happened thousands of times, and you never saw it a second time. So, in fact, while there were a lot of false alarms, today we do the experiment differently. If you get a signal right away, you check it out, see if it's there. And when you do that, all the false alarms seem to go away. But if we got a real signal and say, there is something up there, then we'd go back, we'd build a much bigger instrument, we would get those bits, we would get the message. I don't know if we'll ever succeed, but even if you don't, at least you know that there's intelligence out there, and that's really the big question.
For Shostak, future successes for SETI in its search for life may come from the Allen Telescope Array. With a stunning 42 dishes, it will allow more of the sky to be scanned.
The reason we haven't found anything by now, if you ask me, is we haven't looked enough. We've only looked at 750 star systems. That's a small number. This thing will be able to look at 1 million star systems in the next 24 years. To me, that's the right number for success.
SETI is popular in the public eye. Research and educational programs are all funded through private donations and government grants. Though I can't help but wonder if looking for messages from ET in space is a bit of a wild goose chase. But deep in the Wild West, at the University of Wyoming in Laramie, NASA is funding a different way to reach out and touch life in the universe. Dr. Jeffrey Lockwood, a bug scientist by trade, teaches a course on creative writing to alien species.
I know you're an entomologist by training, studying insects, which some people think are like very alien critters here on Earth. How did you make the transition from that field of study to writing?
Thinking in terms of another mind was something that I had practiced actually via entomology, and so the leap to other minds and other intelligences was in a sense not all that radical.
Lockwood directed his students to write creative essays describing our civilization to another.
What is the essence of being human? What is it that we would say to another civilization if we were to be heard? Is a powerful way for us to reflect upon our own sense of meaning and purpose and value. It required the students to trust me and to trust themselves and to have a sense of both seriousness and playfulness in terms of composition, and I was delighted that they were able to hold those two things in balance and really put together some exciting pieces.
One of the most intriguing aspects of this project is the fact that it's written English, and it's writing, which hinges on having a linguistic sensibility to approaching communication, and some people might argue that aliens wouldn't have such a thing.
Well, it's a common concern, and that's why people have tried to use, say, scientific formula or mathematics. But of course, those aren't necessarily universal either, right? When we sent out the Pioneer with the plaque, we etched 9 planets on it, and now if we sent it out, we'd have to scratch one off. And maybe the problem of translation, which we think is a big problem, will have been solved. Think of the advances we've made in recent years with regard to translation, and multiply that by 100,000 years, and maybe it's not at all absurd to try to communicate in our language and assume that they'll have the capacity to translate and understand.
If I were to take Lockwood's course, I would probably write science fiction. Now, science fiction largely deals with astronomical concepts, physical concepts. I think we could establish a certain rapport with the technological civilization if we were writing about concepts that they would be familiar with.
Science fiction confronts our worst fears with visions of menacing creatures from other worlds. But should science dismiss countless UFO reports and the sacred legends of ancient mythology? And how would people react if we discovered we were not alone? Man's place in the universe was challenged in the early 70s when Erich von Däniken published his notoriously popular Chariots of the Gods, which made wild claims of connections between the Egyptian pyramids and civilizations from Orion. He based his arguments on what he considered to be evidence from our own history. Myths of our ties to the stars and even Mars have always fascinated mankind. But are the claims really wild?
The ancient literature, the Greek legends, all of this indicates that there are extraterrestrial legends. So most people think of those as myths or stories. To me, the evidence from the historical sources is enough.
Leo Sprinkle is an American psychologist and the first academic professor to investigate alien abductions.
People, individuals, occupants, aliens, ETs, whatever you want to call them, that can come in and out of our reality, in and out of our dimension. If we don't want to think of those as extraterrestrial, we can call them extra-dimensional, angels or demons or whatever people used to call things that would suddenly appear and suddenly disappear.
As compelling and dramatic as they are, I think stories of alien abductions and government conspiracies don't contribute to a general consensus on whether life exists elsewhere. But that is no reason not to imagine.
The prospect of contact with ETI thrills me personally. I would have no problems with it. However, I am a little bit terrified by the reaction that some other people would have by it. People that would be in a position to kind of influence the course of events that impacts my life. And, we're not all on the same page regarding this issue. And a lot of people I don't think would welcome it. I think they would be terrified to their existential core about it.
In the UK, like many countries, military records are kept when encounters with UFOs and other phenomena are reported. Nick Pope was director of the Ministry of Defense UFO Research Group.
It is quite possible that we are looking in the wrong place. We do all the obvious things. We look in the sky with telescopes, we listen with our radio telescopes, but if we're dealing with extraterrestrial life, we may be, almost by definition, dealing with something so alien that the answer may be something we haven't even thought of. I think that if we were being studied and observed by a civilization more advanced than us, on one level, if they were billions of years ahead or millions, they might regard us as just cattle.
Liftoff. Liftoff. 30 minutes after the hour.
But I think it's more likely that they would recognize our intelligence and regard us perhaps almost as their children. That they would look back perhaps at their own past and see us on the same sort of journey. Maybe they'd help us avoid some of the mistakes they may have made. Maybe they'd share with us some technology. I think there are all sorts of intriguing possibilities.
But with frequent reports of UFOs lurking over military installations and nuclear power plants, one wonders how beneficial contact may be.
Worst case scenario, they might want to annihilate us. They might want to invade the Earth. I suspect if they wanted to do that, if they're sufficiently in advance of us, there's little or nothing we could do to stop them. One would hope to find a situation, though, where if they were more advanced technologically, there had been a sort of moral growth as well.
Back on Earth, the business of astronomy and astrobiology is attracting vibrant new minds. Inspired by the hit movie Contact, Margaret Turnbull was recently named a genius by CNN. Her work in the search for habitable planets could be our best bet in finding life of any kind.
When I was a junior in college, the movie Contact came out.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
I was so inspired by that movie. I was like, that is what I am supposed to do. I ended up spending my first summer of grad school at SETI, and my task was to basically create a new target list for SETI, new and improved, and much larger than before.
Okay, so with over 200 planets and counting, the task now is to select the planets that might have, well, might be Earth-like, first of all,
right,
and might have life.
Well, first of all, what I do as an astronomer is I'm looking at the stars themselves. In fact, that's how most of these planets are known, is we're looking at the star and seeing slight motions that indicate something is orbiting them that we can't otherwise see.
In its early development stages, a bold new NASA project headed by Turnbull will probe the farthest regions of space for planets that could support life. The New World's explorer could become the Columbus of the 21st century.
This particular observatory is looking at the interstellar landscape from a distance, here in the Milky Way and beyond. We're on the perimeter of the Milky Way, we're in the suburbs. They're looking out deep into deep space between stars, not just merely at other planets, but actually between distant stars. They're also attempting to resolve the presence of extrasolar planets. We haven't found an extrasolar planet that is Earth-like yet.
Earth-like planets will have to conform to some pretty tight specifications, and the task of identifying these planets has been tremendously difficult. Enter Turnbull.
We're looking at the star and seeing slight motions in the star that indicate something is orbiting them that we can't otherwise see. The mission that I'm working with is called the New World's Observer. I'm really excited about this because the idea is you'll have two separate spacecraft, say a 4-meter space telescope, something like Hubble but a lot bigger, and a star shade. We call it a star shade. It's basically a big plastic star-shaped tent that you fly 80,000 kilometers in front of your telescope. And what you do is you position it so that it blocks out the light of a nearby star and allows you to actually see the little pinprick of light coming from any planets in orbit around that star. And with that point of light, there's an amazing amount of stuff you can do. Okay. You can look at, well, what color is it? Is it blue? Does it indicate water? You know, does the color indicate clouds, deserts? Is it red, like Mars?
Okay, and if we were in another star system looking towards Earth, what would we see?
You'd see a pale blue dot that changes over time. It changes every single day in color because of oceans and continents and forests and clouds passing through your view. So change over time is really key to being able to characterize other planets for the first time.
Let's say that the New World's observers that go, we find living planets. What happens to you? Where do you come in then?
If we find life on another planet, if it's microbial life, or if it's SETI and it's intelligent life, All eyes are going to be on that research, and there will be suddenly a lot more astrobiologists in my field than there are right now. And we will see a new push toward exploring the universe in that way, specifically looking for life.
But maybe, most importantly, the sheer wonder of gazing toward the heavens has its own rewards, and we can still strive towards the stars. Even if we find we are just a humdrum planet in some forgotten corner of the universe.
It is possible that we're not alone and that we've already have detected signals that have been generated by other civilizations. We just don't know it yet.
If we were convinced by the evidence presented so far that there was at least a 10% chance that aliens were visiting Earth, I think we would drop this whole plan to use antennas and telescopes to look for signals. It would be enormously more interesting to find them here.
Paying a great deal of attention to what we want to say to another civilization, that's very important. But I think the real importance is the exploration of what that means to us.
There's a danger in any extraterrestrial contact that actually we lose something as well. The moment we start interacting with other intelligences, arguably we start getting outside influences and we lose perhaps the very thing that makes us unique.
If we are an extraordinarily rare kind of phenomenon, we'd better take care of ourselves a little bit more than we're doing at the moment. And if, on the other hand, life is common and intelligent life is common, then if we blow ourselves up, it's much less important.
Although there is still no solid evidence of extraterrestrial life, intelligent or otherwise, every day new discoveries are made and new theories are put forth, fueling the search. New expeditions into space, coupled with the efforts of those who spend their days in lonely mountaintop observatories, may shed light on the issue. But the question remains, are we alone in the universe? We investigate, you decide. I'm Robert J. Sawyer. Thank you for joining us on Supernatural Investigator.